everyone, and welcome back to Coffee Break. I'm your Oat Milk defending host, Mason Langlois, and today we have a very special interview with Hollywood director, Casey Tebow. Now, let's get on to the Mug of the Week. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Mug of the Week. For this week's mug, we have a purple mug. This is a mug that I got for Christmas, actually. I figured that I would pull it out for, the Welcome Back from Christmas Break episode. I got it from my friend Mikey. He made it himself. He stained it all purple for me because purple's my favorite color. And I'm really excited about it. I just wanted to show it to all of you. But now it's time for the interview.
Here's how you can donate to DHS TV Media with Donors Choose. First, search up Donors Choose on Google, or if you have a link, you can use it. Click on the top link. Once you're on the website, click Find a Classroom to Support. And search up Parati. Next, choose which project you want to support. And type in the amount you want to donate. This is the most important part. Switch the amount of money supporting Donors Choose from 15% to 0%. This will make it so that we can finish the projects faster. Then you can do the rest.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Coffee Break. On today's episode, we have Casey Tebow with us, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
You just did. I mean, I don't know what else I have to say. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is an incredible studio you guys have here. You're all very lucky as students to have this kind of hands-on experience, because I didn't have anything like this in high school. We had to sort of just like pick up a digital camera and try to make stuff. So as you said, my name's Casey Tebow. I'm a filmmaker. I've done a couple documentaries, a couple narrative features. I worked in TV for a while, places like MTV, VH1, CMT, ABC, ESPN. I won an Emmy for ESPN. I worked in rock and roll for a long time, which is kind of how I made my way into the movie business. And I live in Bristol County. I'm a dad. That's pretty boring, but it keeps me grounded, so.
So, speaking on your Emmy Award win, so you said you did get a shot in rock and roll.
Yep.
So just about that, what about rock and roll really got your start in filmmaking? How did it inspire you to start filmmaking?
When I was a kid, I think when I was probably 9 or 10, I remember watching, I saw all the classics, Jaws, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I remember seeing, I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. My dad was a track coach at Apponequet. And there's a scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where he pole vaults over this chasm. And I was like, wait a minute, that's like the same thing that people do in track. So then I kind of connected, well, okay, there's people actually making this thing. And a lot of my heroes, see, music for my generation, I think, is a little different than you guys' generation. We didn't have iPhones and social media because those things are incredible. You can play games, you can play music. We kind of only had music. And when an album would come out by a rock and roll band like a Guns N' Roses or somebody, it was a real event for us. It was like the release of the new iPhone. And I just had always loved rock and roll. And when you grow up it's different now, but when I grew up, if you wanted to be a filmmaker, you had to go to Los Angeles. Or maybe New York, but New York was more TV. Yeah. And I had an opportunity to work with the guys from Aerosmith who were based in the Boston area. And I was like, well, I obviously can't pass that up. And I started like you guys, when I was younger, I was working around them just with little cameras and getting coffee. And then after a couple of years, it was like, well, why don't you do this? And then a couple more years, it was like, why don't you do this? And I think you obviously you have to have a little bit of talent. Questionable for me, I don't know if I do. But you also have to have the drive to show people that you're willing to go above and beyond. But it was just a natural fit for me because those guys were local, and I knew that if I started working for the guys in Aerosmith, it would help me. Selfishly, I knew it would help me launch pad to other things, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started in rock and roll.
So yeah, so now to flash forward a little bit to one of your more recent films, Black Friday. What is some of the differences between working in just specifically the horror genre compared to, say, like a fantasy film or something else like that?
That's an interesting question. I think the thing for any of the kids watching, whatever types of movies you want to make, if you want to make dramatic stories, if you want to make fantasy stories, if you want to make LGBTQ stories, if you want to make action, there's different components to each thing as far as like what's the level of success that you want to have with that project. Do you want to just get your name out there? Do you want to become a feature film director? The thing about horror is, like, you look at some of the recent releases, like hopefully some of you guys can relate to this movie Talk to Me that came out.
Yeah.
The two directors were YouTube kids, and how awesome that that movie was huge.
Yeah.
So I think it goes to show, like, you can use things like YouTube as a launch pad to get into feature films, but if you watch that movie, there's no actors in that movie that anybody knows. And I lucked out a little bit on Black Friday because Bruce Campbell is a huge name in the horror. Evil Dead, he's a legend. Michael Jai White, who was Spawn, and he was in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
People love him as well. Devon Sawa has been in all the Chucky shows, and he was in Final Destination. Ivana Baquero was in Pan's Labyrinth. So I was lucky enough to sort of put together this Avengers type of cast for horror. And the thing about horror is you don't usually need big name actors to make a successful horror movie. And we've been very lucky over the last 2 years. Every year on Black Friday, we get this huge push. Like, it was just like number 10 on iTunes for rentals because it's Black Friday. So there's different challenges in every genre. You know, if you want to make a cop movie, you're going to have to deal with a lot of safety rules and stunts, and it's expensive. You know, in horror, you can... Horror, I think, for the most part, is probably the most accessible type of movie because you could get your friends and take one of these cameras and go out in the woods, and as long as there's a pretty good story behind it and some good folklore, you could probably make a pretty good horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, continue on the topic of horror. As you just said, horror is a good sort of like launching ground for new filmmakers that want to sort of get into the genre. Could you like expand any more on that?
Well, like I said, you know, horror can be made for low budget. There's a lot, you know, look at the last, I think the last Aquaman movie made $1 billion, and it was directed by James Wan, who directed the first Saw movie. The first Saw movie was like $1 million film that, you know, he continued to do The Conjuring and a bunch of other things, but that's what got him into it. When I sort of made the leap, I got a late start. I didn't really get into it till I was in my 30s, but you have to be careful when you make horror movies because you look at someone like Sam Raimi, who came from Evil Dead. He ended up going on to direct huge Marvel movies, but also small dramatic movies like A Simple Plan. He directed some other, there was another great drama he did with Cate Blanchett. When you get into horror movies, if you're not careful, after every horror movie you make, you'll just get offered to do more horror movies, which you can get pigeonholed and stuck in that. It's like the next film I'm prepping to do is not a horror movie. It's like an action comedy. So you have to be careful because you can get, you can get stuck in those places. Yeah, for sure.
All right, now to go back a little bit, back to music videos. Continue on sort of like a question where it's like, oh, how is this different from directing things?
Yeah.
What's the differences in sort of directing a music video compared to like a TV show or like a feature film or something like that?
Music videos usually are, in my experience, are done in a day. And you know, you're talking about 3 minutes of, as you kids call it, content. 3 minutes of content. So you have to, usually when a music video comes, artists will reach out to 4 or 5 directors and say, do you have an idea? And you write a treatment, which is a 1-page kind of synopsis about what the idea for the video is. And the difference between music videos and usually feature films or documentaries is when you have a feature film, it's written on a page. A music video is not really written on a page. It's just like, all right, we're going to do a wide shot of the band playing, then we're going to do a close-up of the singer, a close-up of the guitar player, a close-up of the drummer, and then our B story is, you know, a kid crashes his car and he's walking home trying to figure out his way home and he gets picked up by whatever. Like, then you got to film all that, and then you just sort of cut it back and forth. And in my experience, I think the thing that makes a great music video is, in a lot of editing, I think, a lot of great editing is finding the best moments in things. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about flashy transitions or quick choppy stuff. It's what are the best moments? Because if you think about the movies that you love or TV shows that you love, or the other day my son was reciting a line from the show Invincible, mm-hmm. and I was laughing because it was so funny what he was saying. And things you remember like that are the little moments. Mm-hmm. So it's about finding all these little moments that are really special. When I think a music video, a lot of times is about finding those moments, mm-hmm. you know?
So what would you say your favorite thing that you've ever worked on was?
My favorite thing was probably Black Friday, because I got to work with Bruce Campbell and Devin and Michael and Ivana, but it was a real hard shoot because we shot it in the middle of COVID, mm-hmm. and like, it was just a real burden we didn't have enough extras. That's very clear in the movie. It's supposed to be Black Friday and there's like barely any people in the store. But, you know, the people really seem to enjoy it. So, you know, no harm, no foul. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another thing I just wanted to ask about Black Friday was, like you just said, you recorded it during COVID-19,
yeah.
and you had a lot of limitations placed on you. Other than just not having extras, were there any other challenges that you faced outside of that?
I've had, this is not my ego speaking, I've had pretty good experience. My first film was called Happy Birthday. It was a little, very small indie film. Steven Tyler from Aerosmith was in it, which helped us get some press. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of, because when I went to sell the movie, the Gersh agency who was selling it, they were like, oh, we're really nervous about Steven. He's not really an actor. He's going to stop the movie. And when they watched it, they were emailing me going, wow, he's really great. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I think that's what a director does. They can make an actor, even who's not an actor, they can make somebody have a good performance. Mm-hmm. And same thing goes for Black Friday. There was a lot of press that said, wow, Bruce Campbell is so great. He's still playing against typecasts. And it's like, I think if I was a bad director, Bruce maybe wouldn't have, I mean, listen, Bruce is a legend, so I'm not going to worry about it. But the difficult thing in Black Friday, to long-windedly answer your question, is I had on a face mask and a face shield. Mm-hmm. So when I'm going to talk to an actor, the thing about actors is, no disrespect to actors, I love them all, a lot of them they're artists, and they're very insecure, because a lot of acting is, I think, and stand-up comedy and performing in general, is a lot of artists are insecure, and you're trying to show the world that you're worth something. And a lot of these actors are insecure. So it's a lot of times you have to just sort of pull them aside and have a conversation with them and reassure them that they're doing great work, and just sort of baby them a little bit. Mm-hmm. So when you're trying to talk to an actor and you have a face shield and a face mask, you can't get very personal. I remember the first time I had lunch with Devin Sawa after COVID, mm-hmm. he was like, man, I don't even recognize you. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you had a face mask on the whole time. I was like, that's right. Mm-hmm. So that goes to show you, it was very impersonal.
Yeah. So back to Aerosmith again.
Sure.
Sorry for jumping around a little bit.
No, it's all good. I have ADD, so it's fine.
What would you say is your favorite Aerosmith song, that you ever listened to?
That's a really great question. There's a song off of their second record, Get Your Wings, called Lord of the Thighs, which is a play on Lord of the Flies, obviously. But I think it's about a 1970s era New York City kind of pimp, which is this old trope from like the 70s when it was very grimy and dirty. It's just a really great song, and it kind of goes on longer than most rock songs usually do. But a lot of their music is, I work with those guys so many times and I never get tired of it. We were just doing their last tour and they're playing all these songs and there's 30,000 people screaming and it's, I mean, how do you not get intoxicated by that?
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So now, last but not least, I'd like to ask you what is sort of the difference between documentary filmmaking and normal filmmaking? You know,
It's a really good question, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I think the difference is. So the strike just happened with all the actors and writers, so nobody was really working. I was lucky enough to get approached by a studio, and they said, hey, we have this project we'd like you to do, and it's a really big documentary. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do it. I have children. I need to feed them. So we're in the middle of working on it now. And it's like I was in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago filming for this project. And then I was in Florida filming for this project. Then I came home and I looked at the footage and then was with my kids and whatever. And then tomorrow I'm going to Nashville because I'm filming on Monday in Nashville. And then I'll come home Monday night. And then we're editing and we're looking at archival footage. I've been down at Cinelab in New Bedford scanning old film, looking at archival footage. When you make a feature film, when I was doing Black Friday, it's, you know, 2 months of prep, Monday through Friday, like 8 to 5 p.m., 8 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m., and then you're shooting Monday to Friday. The people think that the film industry is loosey-goosey and it's very fun and it's easy. Some of that stuff is, it's hard. It's hard, long hours. There are guys like, the guys and girls who are the grips and the electric and the camera department, like it's on par with almost like working construction. Like you're moving equipment, you're moving things. These are blue collar type of people. So the main difference is when you make a documentary, it's probably so much more laid back. It's making a documentary is like, I don't want to offend anybody and I don't mean it like this, but this is the best analogy I can give you. Making a documentary is like researching a war. Making a film is like being in a war. So that's the best analogy I can give.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for today.
Awesome.
I'd like to thank you so much for
Sure.
coming on.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
New laws and regulations that involve vulnerable users are constantly being enforced to keep all people safe no matter what form of transportation they use. Vulnerable users can be many different types of people, but people walking are most likely to be the ones that you come across on the road.
Walkers may see possible dangers when crossing the road. Here is an example of what not to do. See how she doesn't look both ways before she crossed, was distracted with her phone, and didn't bother to use the crosswalk. These types of risks could result in accidents, and it's important to do things the proper way to remain safe.
Here's the right way to cross the road. See how she uses a crosswalk and even looks both ways before doing so? There are no distractions and she easily makes it to the other side unharmed. It is very crucial to do these things in order to keep yourself and others out of harm's way. Remember to use the skills we taught you and stay safe.
Well, that's all for this week. I would once again like to thank Casey Tebow for speaking with us today. On the next episode, we will have a very special interview with Mrs. Franco and Mr. Brodsky about their giant grant from Samsung. Once again, I've been your host, Mason Langlois, and I'll see you next time on another episode of Coffee Break.